What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. So we're going to take a look at a tutorial here today for installing Windows 11 on your Steam Deck OLED, and we'll also take a look at some game testing and some comparison to the LCD to give us an idea of the game performance. Now there's also some issues that we run into along the way, so you're definitely going to want to try to check out everything here if you can, if you're getting into doing this. One of them of course being like the drivers still don't make the speakers work and things like that. Now I also have a dual boot guide. I'm not doing dual boot in this, I'm only putting Windows on here, then I'm going to revert my OLED back to SteamOS, but I have covered creating partitions and installing Windows separately and that type of thing in other videos. It does still break a lot of the time though in Steam updates and stuff like that, so I'm going to avoid it here, but if you want to get into it, there will of course be links in the description. Now as far as what you're going to need, of course you're going to need your Steam Deck OLED because that's where we're installing Windows to, and you're going to need some kind of dock or hub to make things easier. I like to have this to plug in my power, my USB stick for the Windows media, drivers, and that type of thing. So I'll probably use this flat hub here as it's easier to record, but having something like this will definitely make it easier. And I'll plug that into either my 65 watt or 100 watt charger for the hub. Now you're also going to need the USB stick here to create your Windows installation media, 8 gigs or higher, and you're going to need a Windows PC still to create that media. So if you don't have a Windows PC around, you're going to need to get to somewhere that has one or borrow one to make that real quick, and that's the only time you'll need a Windows PC really, other than the drivers as well, because there's some issues connecting to the internet and stuff like that when we get in, and you'll see that later in the video. And you also do need to be on SteamOS Beta 369 or later, which I'll show you how to do as well. But Steam has brought in the APU drivers here, SD card reader drivers, Wi-Fi driver, Bluetooth driver, and also the audio drivers. But for now, the audio drivers still don't put audio through the speakers, which is pretty annoying for this, but headphones do work, as does Bluetooth audio, and we'll talk about all that more as we get into the video. So you might want to grab all these and get those on a USB as well. Now, we do have to be on that Beta OS to be on the proper BIOS to get that Bluetooth to work. So we're going to go in here to System Settings, go into System, and we're going to change our System Update channel from Stable down to Beta. So we'll go ahead and do that, and we'll go ahead and get this thing restarted. Once we do that, we're not going to quite be done. There are still going to be some updates within Beta that we need to do. So once that part's done, we're going to go back into our settings again, go into System, and then check for updates, or if the apply is already here, you'll probably see 3.6.10 or later, depending on when you're watching this video. And keep in mind, things could change along the way from Valve as to which version you actually need to be on and that type of thing. So always check the website for updated information. But once that update gets done and we're fully into the beta channel here and everything's fully updated, we go back into settings to check, go into system, and we don't have any more updates here, and we are indeed on 3.6.9, which will show up for the OS down here. So that gets us properly on a beta channel, fully updated and ready to install Windows and get it looking more like our LCD deck here, which already has Windows 11 on it. But we do need to create that Windows installation media first. So over here on my PC, we're going to go ahead and do that and put the USB that I showed you guys. So I got my USB stick plugged into my 3.0 port. I'm going to go into the Windows 11 website for download, which again, all these links will be in the description to try to help you out, but you can also Google and find this stuff pretty quick as well. We're going to download the middle one here, create Windows 11 installation media. That's going to download really quickly. We can close out of this and we'll go into our downloads folder. Once we're in our downloads folder, we can go ahead and double click and open up the Windows 11 setup here. Go ahead and go through, accept terms. And then once we do that, it'll start getting ready and we'll be able to pick our USB drive that we have ready to go here. So it won't take very long. And then it's going to say select language and edition. It's usually default check mark to the PC you're on. Just double check that this is the way you need it, especially if you're borrowing a PC or using some other PC to make this installation media. So we'll hit next here, and then we have USB flash drive, which is what we're going to use here for this. So we'll go ahead and come down here and click next. Here's our drive on F right here. Verify that and click next. So it'll do its thing here. It's going to create the installation media on the USB drive. We'll go ahead and fast forward past some of this, but once that gets done, it'll come in here and it'll say that it's finished and your USB drive is ready. You're going to want to go ahead and click finish, as it'll do a little bit of a cleanup process, and then you'll be able to eject the USB and it's ready to use to install Windows 11 on your Steam Deck OLED. And you can see here it's created all the installation media on the USB drive. So we'll go ahead and get that out of here. We'll click eject, and we'll grab the USB stick and get ready to install. Now, just ahead of time, so you're set up, to give you a heads up, we are going to talk about the issues I run into with the internet later. There used to be some other options in Windows to do this later, but there isn't anymore, or there wasn't for me on this. So I wound up having to go run down to my desk, get plugged into some Ethernet. I went ahead and downloaded all the drivers from the site and put them on that USB stick because I could tell I was having issues with internet off the bat with the OLED. So we'll get into that more, but just be aware and be ready for an Ethernet connection. All right, with all that out of the way, let's get the Steam Deck shut down here, go to power, shut down, and we'll get Windows installed. Again, since I'm not doing dual boot, this will be a little bit easier process here. So I'm going to take my hub, get it plugged into power. I'm going to get that USB stick with the Windows installation media on it. We're going to get that plugged in, ready to go for our boot up. I'm also going to have my little bug here for my wireless keyboard and mouse just in case I want to use it. It does make it easier if you have that available as well. All right, so we'll go ahead and plug in the hub here. And then we're going to want to launch into our boot menu. So we want to grab the down volume button here, hold that down, and then we're going to hit power. You can let go of power, but keep holding the down volume button until we get to the boot menu. So that'll start up here. Takes just a few seconds. It's going to take a little longer than the normal startup, and then there we go. Here's our boot manager. So what we're going to want to do is find the USB stick that we have our Windows installation media on. Here's my scan disk one right here. I'm going to go ahead and select that, and then the Steam Deck will boot up from the USB drive. All right, with that booted up, we are ready for Windows installation. This is going to switch to portrait mode, and you're going to be able to change this to landscape once we get into desktop mode, but all of your initial Windows setup and install is going to be done here from portrait, and I'll do all this with touchscreen as well and let you guys see this. So once the setup gets started here, I'm going to click I do not have a key because I have digital licenses that'll work. If you have a key, you can put it in, or you can buy a key later. And I'm going to do Windows Home here for me. So we'll click next. And then we're going to go ahead and do agree to this here. And then we're going to come down to custom. We're going to install a fresh copy here. Now, make sure you have any kind of SD cards or anything unplugged. I'm going to go ahead and delete all the partitions that I had on here, but make sure you don't delete anything you don't want to. If you had some other partitions or other drives here, just make sure you're deleting what you want to here. But I'm cleaning this thing out just down to a fully clean SSD that Windows is then going to format here and install on. All right, so once we get through that, get the installation going on here. We'll go ahead and fast forward. It doesn't take but a few minutes for Windows to go through all these steps, and then it's going to start its restart, and then it's going to have everything ready to boot off of the SSD. So once it restarts, you're going to come into the normal Windows setup, which most of you, I'm sure, are very familiar with. So you're going to select your language and go through a bunch of processes, sign into your account, all those kinds of things. But we do hit a snag here that I was talking about earlier, and so we'll go ahead and click next here. We'll click yes for the keyboard layout, skip, and then we get let's connect you to a network. Now, Windows 11 on the deck never did have Wi-Fi off the bat. You had to get to desktop mode first and then install the Wi-Fi drivers. But you used to have a skip for now option here to do that, and you don't anymore. And this is where I was talking about I had to run down to my desk and get plugged in with Ethernet long enough just to get through the setup process to desktop. And then I was able to come back out here to the recording with its final boot up all set up here before we go to portrait mode, and it worked just fine that way. But there was no way for me to get past that without an Ethernet connection on the device, and that's just something to be aware of. But once I got past that and I'm into desktop, we can actually get to work here and get this thing set up. The first thing I want to do is switch over to landscape mode. So I'll hold down the screen there, get to my display settings, and we'll go ahead and scroll down here. It should say portrait, and we'll select landscape. Now we can actually get busy and see what we're doing here. So now we're in landscape mode, and we've got Windows 11 on here ready to go, and there's plenty to do still, of course. And one of the first things that I want to get into is installing the Wi-Fi driver so I can do all the other updates and stuff first, and then I'll install the rest of the deck drivers from Valve. With that USB stick plugged in, I can go into that folder I made of the Steam Deck drivers, go in here, and we're going to hold on that, and we're going to extract all on the Wi-Fi driver. Go ahead and let that extract, and then it'll automatically open that folder up. Takes a little bit more time from the USB, but It's not too bad. This is why I like to have all these drivers ready on the USB stick ahead of time, especially with Windows 11 on the OLED and these LAN issues. But anyways, we open that folder. We'll pick Windows 11 because that's what we're on here. Go ahead and keep opening this up until we get to the files. Keep going. Open up the next one. And now we're going to scroll down, and you're going to have a system information file all the way down at the bottom. Some of these don't have normal like setup files. You got to install them a little differently. So right here, you can see that file system information right there. We're going to hold on that. And then you're going to have install right up here. Click that, click yes, and then just give it a little bit of time and it'll show you a prompt saying that it was installed successfully. So there we go, installed successfully. And now I can actually connect to my Wi-Fi network and continue on with all of the setup and installation of updates and drivers from there. So there we go, able to have Wi-Fi now, and I'll get connected. So now I'm connected to my Wi-Fi, all of that just to get to the desktop and then to internet so we can actually get this set up. Now, a few quick tips that I get into is I like to set up my taskbar a little bit cleaner off the bat, give me some space down there. Do whatever you want with that, but just kind of a tip if you want to go into the taskbar settings and do that. You can also go into your task manager, which I recommend pinning to your taskbar because you might want to use that quite often, and check for your startup items and always make sure you disable anything that you don't want starting up. We want to keep things as clean and easy as possible. There's certainly cleaner versions of Windows out there you can get your hands on, but I just wanted to use a normal standard one for tutorial here. You can also go in and uninstall any apps that you're not going to want to have on the device or use or anything like that, to not just clear up space, but any resources and things like that. Just a few things I do first before I even get into the next thing, which is installing all of the Windows updates and the Microsoft Store updates before we install all the rest of the drivers from Valve for the Steam Deck. And you're going to have plenty of Windows updates and Store updates to go through. It usually takes quite a while to get those done when you're doing a fresh install of Windows like this. And you're going to need to do it multiple times. So after you do your first run of updates here in both Windows updates and over in the store, you're going to want to go in and do it again and just double check for updates, make sure they're all completely finished for the device in both of these sections, both Windows Update and the store. But once you get all of those done, you'll be able to move on and install the rest of the drivers that we have from Valve here for the Steam Deck OLED. So once I'm satisfied that all the updates are done in Windows Updates and in the store, which took quite a while, we can go in here and install the rest of those drivers that I have on my USB stick that we downloaded from the Valve website. Now I'll go in here. I already did the Wi-Fi driver. The next thing I'm going to do on here is going to be the Bluetooth driver. So I'll go ahead and we'll extract that. So we'll highlight. I'm just going to use touchscreen to show you guys that way. Hold on there. Extract all. And I'll go ahead and go through and show you each one of these for those of you that aren't very familiar how to do this. We'll open up each of these folders until we get all the way down. And then once again, you're going to see that that system information or setup information folder there. We're going to hold on that. You can click install or show more options and click install. Click yes. And then that'll give us our Bluetooth driver. That's a pretty quick install for that one. And actually, if I click down on our quick access down on the bottom here, you'll see our Bluetooth has popped up now as well. All right, so the next thing we're going to do now that we have that on, let's go ahead and do the SD card reader driver from them. So same thing, I'll highlight that, I'll hold on there, we'll go to extract all, extract, and then same idea, wait for this to get finished. I'll open up the folder, open that up, and this actually does have a setup icon, so just double tap that, and we'll actually do a normal setup here for the SD card reader. Now once that finishes up, you'll need to do a restart to activate that, but for right now I'm just going to keep going. We'll go back to the drivers, and the next thing we're going to do is the two audio drivers, which we'll want to do in order. So audio number 1, same thing here, hold on that, extract all. It'll open up the folder, open that up, and then the same idea here, go into that setup information folder, hold on that, oh, go back, hold on there, and install. Yes. And now your first one's done. Now we'll go back and we'll install that second audio. Even though the speakers still don't work, I'm just going through this process because the headphones do work, the Bluetooth audio works, and hopefully we'll get an update soon for the speaker part of this. But same thing, open up all the way down to that setup information, highlight that, I'll hold on there, and then we'll click install. Click yes, and now that's finished. The only thing we have left is our graphics driver. So let's go ahead and go back here. And our GFX driver, we'll extract that. That one actually takes a little while to extract from the USB, so we'll fast forward a little bit there, but we'll get that extracted. Once that's finished up, it'll open up its folder, and there's a setup for this as well. Double tap that, click yes, and then we'll get into our actual graphics driver install, and that's the final driver that we'll have to do here. So AMD software. Now you don't actually get AMD Adrenalin software on the decks, either the LCD or the OLED, and you miss a lot of features, but it does give us the proper drivers here. So this will pop up ready to install. This is the first time install for me on here, so it'll be fresh. Click install. And then that won't take too long. It'll probably flip back to portrait mode on you, and you'll probably get a prompt for allowing the rest of the installation, so watch out for that, and then it'll finish up. Once that's done, I'll just go ahead and move this around and click finish, close out my windows, and then we'll go ahead and go back into settings and get back into landscape mode, and then we'll want to do a restart. So close those out, back into display settings, change from portrait to landscape, keep that, and there we go. Now all of our updates are done, all of our drivers are installed, and we're ready to do launchers, games, and all that type of stuff. And I also got a couple other things I want to go over here as well. Let's get this restarted, and I also don't need my hub or anything anymore now that we're fully set up here. All right, so once that restart is done, there we go. Like I said, there's a few more things though before I really get into just installing the games and stuff. Windows already has access to like your touchpad and your triggers for clicking, so off the bat that will work. And when you open up Steam, it will work as well, and you'll have full controller support for your games. But if you want to play any games that aren't from Steam, like Game Pass or Ubisoft or whatever the case, you're going to need something to do that to make the controls work. I use Handheld Companion. There'll of course be a link to this in the description for you. I've used this software for a couple of years on Steam Deck for Windows, and it's very easy. So I go into the website, I'm going to download the newest release right here. It is going to give you a prompt here when you are downloading, so make sure you go in here. You're going to have to allow this to finish. Click on the dots, click keep, click show more, and then keep anyway, and it'll finish its download. This also allows you to do a lot more besides just controller support. There's fan control, TDP, all kinds of stuff that you can do with Handheld Companion. So we'll go in here into our downloads, and we're going to go ahead and install that real quick. This is the fastest way to really get controller support with minimum effort, even if you use no other features of this app. Even if you just install it, give yourself a shortcut to switch between desktop and gamepad mode, and you're good to go. All right, so once that's installed, we'll need to do a restart. Go ahead and restart that. And once we're restarted, we're going to have Handheld Companion available to us if we're not using Steam and we're using some other launcher that we need control for. So if I open up something like the Xbox app, it would normally have controller support, and you can actually just scroll around with your controls and select what you want with A. But that doesn't work here, of course, because without HC open or Handheld Companion open, that's not going to work. So let me close down Xbox, the app. I'm going to open up Handheld Companion here. And now once that's opened up, you'll see here we have different ways to turn off like our virtual controller for Steam, for our system. You can mess with TDP, the fans, all that kind of stuff. But what I'm concentrating on here is the game controls and the one hotkey that switches between desktop mode and gamepad mode. If I go over here to hotkeys and we scroll down, you'll see desktop layout. I'm going to click here and set one of my back paddles to toggle that on and off. So when I'm not in the Handheld Companion app, I'll switch between desktop mode and gamepad mode, which of course is between having mouse or not here and the game's recognizing the gamepad. So there we go. That's able to easily use my paddle now to switch between gamepad mode and desktop mode with Handheld Companion open, and using anything that's not a Steam launcher. So that'll work really well. But if you're running Steam games, you really don't need Handheld Companion or any of that if you don't want to get into it. Again, there's a lot of other stuff that you can do in this app with control for the Steam Deck. I really highly recommend this app if you are running Windows on a Steam Deck. It has a lot of useful features. But yeah, definitely if you're going to do anything besides Steam games, you're going to want to get into that. And you can see here full controller support now in the app. And of course, I could go in and play any other games or any other launchers with the gamepad there. Now, something else I do want to throw in here is the set amount of VRAM. This will often default back to the 1 GB on here, and I find a lot of games do better with 4 GB set with this 16 GB system. So I do want to switch that back. We're going to go ahead and shut down the Steam Deck. I'm going to hold up volume button and hit power. Keep holding the up volume button until we get into the BIOS setup here, or at least the menu. There we go. And then we'll be able to scroll over to the bottom right to set up utility. That'll get us into the BIOS. We can go down one to advanced, and then we're going to go over here, and we're going to change the UMA frame buffer size. It's 1G right now. We're going to change that to 4. And now we'll have 4 gigabytes dedicated to our VRAM, and that just tends to work better for this system, especially over on Windows. So we get that started up here, and you can see now we're switched over 4 gigabytes dedicated. So that should help me out with a lot of the games. I just don't really find the 1 gigabyte to work that great in a lot of games here on Windows, and some of them just pick it up and say there's not enough VRAM. Now taking a look at some game performance, we'll have the Deck OLED and the Deck LCD here, and that ought to give us a decent idea of where things fall for this and how it's working out, especially since we do have a little bit faster RAM on the OLED, and graphics definitely prefer faster RAM, which can help out. Other than that, we have the same amount here. Drivers are going to be a little different and that type of thing. But yeah, ultimately I would say, especially for Cyberpunk, we do see some increased performance here. It's not a lot, but it's kind of what I expected to see with the increased RAM speed here over the Deck LCD. Nothing like super major, but slightly better performance, and only about 1 frame difference or so in the actual benchmark when it comes to the results there. And in-world gameplay is going to be kind of whatever it's going to be too. It's going to swap. Sometimes the OLED will be a little higher, sometimes the LCD will be a little higher. Open world games like this change a lot, especially with NPCs walking around and stuff like that, but very similar performance. On Ghost of Tsushima, this was another interesting one. I got a little bit more FPS, consistently maybe about 2 FPS and maybe smoother frame times when it came to this game over on the OLED versus the LCD. But yeah, ultimately this game is pretty well optimized and runs pretty well, but I was curious to see how it would handle things here. But yeah, oftentimes about 2 FPS difference and maybe some smoother frame times or smoother gameplay that might happen there for that. Again, that's probably all more contributed to the RAM. And then we also have the frame gen in game in this one, which works well for both, but also did a little bit better over on the OLED. And then Shadow of the Tomb Raider is an older game, so I was kind of curious to take a look at that as well. And I didn't expect to see much difference, but maybe 1 or 2 frames better on the OLED, maybe slightly smoother here or there. And again, the faster RAM will certainly help with that. And of course, we have the shrunk down chip, I believe, for AMD on there, which the efficiency can help a little there too, but nothing major difference, at least in these games when it came to performance. 46 and 45 there, but definitely a difference, the kind I expected to see when it comes to RAM speed. And I've been testing the Ally X versus the Ally, and that has the different RAM speed, which kind of shows the same difference of anywhere from 1 to 4 or 5 FPS depending on the game. But yeah, that's pretty much what we're looking at here for setting up Windows and getting some gaming going on the Steam Deck OLED. It's a shame we don't have audio for the speakers yet. They do say they're working on that, but headphones and Bluetooth did work. The OLED screen certainly looks really nice, but when it comes to HDR support, I couldn't get that to pop up at all. It says it's not available in settings, and it wouldn't work anywhere. So I don't know what's up with that. Maybe we're not going to get any HDR support for the OLED here on Windows, or at least not for now anyways. But game performance seems pretty fine across the board. Handheld companion's working well on the Steam Deck OLED, and I'll have links for everything for you guys in the description down below to try to help you out. And make sure you have those drivers from Valve all on your USB ahead of time, especially with those internet connection issues we're having there. All right guys, thanks a lot for coming and check out the video as always. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.